Part 1. The night I stayed awake. I wasn't actually asleep. That's the first thing you need to understand. At 72, your body slows down, but your instincts don't, especially when you've spent 40 years working as a federal judge. You learn one rule: people lie the most when they think no one is watching. The night it happened, the house was unusually quiet. My daughter Emily had insisted I move in with her and her husband, Trevor, after my wife Margaret passed away. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone anymore," she said, hugging me tightly at the funeral. I believed her, but Trevor, he hugged me differently. Not warmly, not coldly either. Measured, like a man calculating something. For weeks after I moved in, little things started bothering me. My mail was already open before I saw it. Bank letters disappeared. Trevor suddenly became very interested in my finances. One evening at dinner, he casually asked, "Judge, have you ever considered setting up a power of attorney? You know, just in case something happens." I smiled politely. "I handled criminals for decades, Trevor. I don't sign papers I don't need." He smiled back, but his eyes didn't. 3 nights later, Emily told me she and Trevor were going out of town for the weekend. "You'll be fine, right, Dad?" she asked. "I've survived worse things than an empty house," I replied. "They left Friday afternoon. Except, they came back. At least Trevor did. I heard the door unlock around midnight. I stayed in my recliner in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, breathing slowly, pretending to sleep. Years in court had taught me patience. I didn't move, not even an inch. Footsteps, soft, careful, not the footsteps of someone who lived here, the footsteps of someone sneaking. Trevor paused near me. I could feel him watching, waiting to see if I'd wake up. I didn't. A minute passed. Then he whispered under his breath, "Perfect." My heart pounded, but my breathing never changed. He walked into my study, and that's when I knew, because earlier that day, I had done something he didn't know about. I had installed a small recorder inside the desk drawer. The study light turned on. Papers shuffled. Cabinet opened. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a folder being opened. The brown legal folder I kept locked. The one containing my property deeds, my savings accounts, and my signature records. A chair scraped across the floor. Then Trevor spoke quietly to someone on the phone. "Yeah, I found them. The signatures match perfectly. Once I signed the power of attorney, everything transfers within days." My chest tightened, but I still didn't move. He wasn't finished, and what he did next was worse than stealing money. He was stealing my life. In part 2, I finally see the document he signed, and who else was involved in the plan. Part 2, the night I chose to pretend. I did not confront Trevor that night. A judge learns one thing over decades: the truth must be caught, not argued. Guilty people deny. Evidence speaks. After I woke up from my chair, I walked to my bedroom slowly, making sure the hallway floorboards creaked. I even coughed loudly. Let him believe the old man knew nothing. I closed my door but didn't sleep. Instead, I waited. 20 minutes later, I heard it. My study door opened again. Soft footsteps, paper sliding, a drawer. Then Trevor's whisper, barely audible through the wall. "I almost have it. Yeah, his signature matches perfectly." My hands tightened around the blanket. He was calling someone. I moved quietly to the hallway and left my door open a fraction. From the darkness, I could see him sitting at my desk under the lamp. A folder was open. He had laid one of my old court letters beside a new document. He was tracing my signature, carefully, patiently. Not a mistake, a plan. Then he said something that chilled me. "After tomorrow, the house transfers. Once the account access clears, we'll move him to assisted living. He won't fight it. He's slowing down already." A second voice crackled through the phone speaker. "Good. And your wife?" Trevor laughed quietly, Emily thinks we're helping him manage finances. She doesn't need details. That sentence hit harder than betrayal. Emily wasn't part of this. My daughter trusted him, and he was using her. I stepped back silently before the floor creaked. I returned to my room and sat in the dark for a long time. Not angry, not shocked, calculating. Because what Trevor didn't know. I never threw anything away from my years on the bench, including a small courtroom recorder. I kept in my study drawer, a habit from reviewing testimonies at home. And tonight, it had been recording the entire time. At 2:14 a.m. the study light finally turned off. His bedroom door closed. I waited another 15 minutes, then quietly walked to my study. The desk drawer was slightly open. Inside sat a legal document. Durable power of attorney, granting Trevor Collins full control of my property, finances, and medical authority. My forged signature sat at the bottom, perfectly placed, but now it was also perfectly documented. I took the recorder, pressed stop, and listened. Trevor's voice echoed clearly. Once I filed this, everything he owns becomes mine to manage. I closed my eyes briefly. The boy I once welcomed into my home had not just betrayed me. He had prepared to erase me. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in almost a decade. Retired detective, one of the few men who ever testified in my courtroom that I trusted more than most lawyers. He answered sleepily. "Hello, Daniel," I said calmly. "This is Judge Robert Hale." Silence. Then, "Judge, is everything all right?" I looked at the forged paper in my hand. "No," I said, "but by tomorrow morning, it will be." In part 3, the detective arrives, and we plan the moment. Trevor walks straight into his own arrest. Part 3, the trap begins. Daniel Harris arrived just after sunrise. He didn't come with sirens or a police cruiser. Just a simple sedan and a paper bag of coffee in his hand, like an old friend stopping by. That alone told me he understood the seriousness. When I opened the door, he studied my face carefully. "You look tired, Judge." "I had a long night," I replied. We sat at the kitchen table. I handed him the recorder first. He didn't interrupt while it played. Trevor's whisper filled the room. "Once I filed this, the house is under my authority. After that, assisted living, and the accounts transfer." Daniel's expression hardened. He replayed it once more to be certain. "That's criminal fraud, elder exploitation, and conspiracy," he said quietly. "But the important part is he hasn't filed it yet." "Meaning?" I asked. "We need him to finish the crime," Daniel said. "If he files the forged document, it becomes undeniable. He walks into the charges himself." I nodded. Courtroom logic. Catch the act, not the intention. We prepared the plan carefully. I would act weaker, forgetful, trusting. Trevor needed confidence. Emily and Trevor returned that evening. Emily hugged me immediately. "Dad, you look pale. Are you sleeping?" "Not well," I answered gently. "I've been forgetting things lately." I saw Trevor notice, and he smiled, very slightly. That smile told me everything. He believed I was declining. During dinner he brought it up casually. "Mr. Hale, I scheduled a small legal meeting tomorrow. Nothing serious, just paperwork, so I can help you handle bills and property if your memory keeps troubling you." I pretended confusion. "Oh, if it helps you manage things." Emily nodded. "That sounds good, Trevor. Dad shouldn't stress about finances." She trusted him completely. I nearly told her the truth right then, but Daniel had warned me confrontation would only make Trevor destroy the evidence, so I stayed silent. The next morning Trevor personally drove me downtown. He was overly polite, held the door, spoke gently. A perfect caretaker. Predators always become kindest before they strike. The office we entered wasn't a random law firm. I recognized the building instantly. Years ago it defended financial criminals in my courtroom. Trevor led me into a conference room where a sharply dressed attorney waited. The same voice from the recording. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," the lawyer said warmly. I acted confused. "Have we met?" Trevor laughed lightly. "Just routine legal work, Dad. This lets me help you manage things." The lawyer slid a document across the table. "The power of attorney. And a pen." Trevor leaned closer. "All you have to do is sign right here." My hand hovered above the paper. Trevor's breathing slowed with anticipation. He believed he had won. I lowered the pen. Then the conference room door suddenly opened. Detective Harris stepped inside. Behind him stood two uniformed officers. "Don't sign that," Daniel said calmly. "That document is evidence." Trevor's face drained of color. The lawyer stood abruptly. "What is this?" I placed the pen down and looked directly at Trevor. "You should have learned something about judges," I said quietly. "We never sleep through a crime." Trevor whispered, shaking. "You were asleep." I checked. I met his eyes. "No," I replied. "I was waiting for you to finish." The officers stepped forward, and for the first time, Trevor realized the trap had been set days ago. In part 4, Emily arrives at the station, and the truth breaks her world apart. Part 4, the truth Emily didn't expect. Trevor didn't fight when the officers took his wrists. He just stared at me. Not angry, not shouting, just stunned, like a man whose entire plan had vanished in a single second. "You set me up," he whispered. I stood slowly, leaning on my cane, and answered calmly, "No, Trevor. You set yourself up. I simply let you finish." The lawyer tried to interrupt, already reaching for his phone. "This is a misunderstanding. My client." Detective Harris cut him off. "We have an audio recording of the forgery, the conspiracy call, and witnesses present during the attempted filing. You'll want a very good defense attorney, because you're not helping him anymore." The room went silent. Trevor finally panicked. He looked toward the door as if hoping someone would rescue him. And then, the door opened again. Emily stood there. She had come because the bank had called her about a legal matter involving her husband. She looked confused at first. Then she saw Trevor in handcuffs. "Trevor," her voice trembled. "What's happening?" He tried to speak. "Emily, listen, it's not what." Detective Harris handed her the recorder. "Ma'am, you should hear this." The room remained completely still as Trevor's own voice filled the speakers. "After the transfer, we move him to assisted living. He won't know what happened." Emily's face lost all color. Then the second line played. "Emily doesn't need to know everything." The recorder clicked off. For a moment she didn't breathe. Her hands started shaking. She looked at Trevor, tears already forming. "You were stealing from my father." Trevor shook his head desperately. "I was protecting our future. He has more money than he'll ever use." Her voice cracked louder than I'd ever heard in her life. "He's my father." The officers led Trevor toward the door. He called out to her, "Emily, please, tell them. Tell them I was helping." But she didn't move. She didn't defend him. She stepped backward, away from him, and that hurt him more than the handcuffs. The door closed behind him. Silence remained. Emily slowly turned toward me. Her eyes were full of guilt. "Dad," she whispered, barely able to stand. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I gently held her shoulders. "I know." And for the first time since her mother's funeral, she collapsed into my arms crying like she was a child again. But the hardest part wasn't over, because I hadn't yet told her one thing. Trevor didn't just want my house. He had already tried to access my medical records, and that meant he had planned something worse than theft. Final part 5, the court hearing and the secret Trevor was hiding comes out in front of everyone. Part 5, the courtroom. 2 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom again, but this time, not behind the bench, in the witness chair. Funny how life circles back. The prosecutor stood before the jury and pressed play on the recorder. Trevor's voice filled the courtroom once more, clear, undeniable. "Once I filed this, Everything he owns becomes mine to manage. You could feel the room shift. Jurors leaned forward. Even the court reporter paused for half a second before continuing to type. Trevor sat at the defense table, pale, exhausted. He hadn't looked at me once since his arrest. Then the prosecutor spoke. "Mr. Hale, did you ever grant Mr. Trevor Collins permission to sign documents on your behalf?" "No," I answered firmly. "Did you ever intend to transfer your property to him?" "Never." The prosecutor nodded and placed another document on the evidence stand. "This," she said, "is a request submitted by the defendant to access the victim's medical competency records." The courtroom murmured. I saw Emily gasp behind me. The prosecutor continued, "The defendant wasn't just attempting financial control. He intended to have Mr. Hale legally declared mentally unfit, which would allow permanent guardianship." The jurors looked at Trevor in disbelief. I finally turned and looked at him. Now I understood everything. He wasn't planning to just steal my money. He was planning to erase my independence, to legally make me disappear. Trevor finally spoke during his testimony. "I wasn't hurting him," he said weakly. "I was securing our future. He's old. He can't manage everything." The prosecutor replied calmly, "You weren't protecting him. You were replacing him." Silence filled the courtroom. Then the verdict came 3 hours later. Guilty, fraud, forgery, elder exploitation, conspiracy. Trevor collapsed into his chair. Emily cried, not for her husband anymore, but for the life she thought she had. As officers led him away, he looked at me one last time. Not angry, just defeated. I stood and simply said, "You didn't lose because I was smarter, Trevor. You lost because you believed kindness meant weakness." 3 months later, Emily moved into a small apartment nearby. We rebuilt slowly, dinners together, quiet talks, honest apologies. One evening she asked softly, "Dad, why didn't you confront him the first night?" I smiled gently. "Because truth isn't proven when you accuse someone," I said. "It's proven when they reveal themselves." She nodded, holding my hand. And for the first time since my wife passed, my home felt peaceful again. I kept the recorder in my desk drawer, not because I feared betrayal, but because it reminded me of something important. Trust people, but never stop paying attention. Part 6. The Letter Trevor Never Expected. Epilogue. I thought the story had ended with the verdict. I was wrong. About a month after Trevor was sent to prison, I received a call from the prosecutor's office. "Judge Hale," she said, "we found something during the financial investigation. We think you should see it personally." The next day I visited the courthouse records department. The prosecutor handed me a sealed envelope, recovered from Trevor's safety deposit box. "It wasn't money," she explained. "It was paperwork he kept hidden. Inside were bank statements, property drafts, and a handwritten letter, addressed to me." My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Trevor's handwriting was uneven, rushed. "Mr. Hale, I know you hate me now, but you deserve the truth. I wasn't only after your house. I was drowning in debt. Not gambling, medical bills. My younger brother has a rare condition. Insurance refused the surgery. I tried loans. I failed. I panicked. I thought if I could control your estate, I could borrow against it and repay it later before you noticed. I told myself it wasn't stealing, just temporary. I know now that I crossed a line I can never undo. I never meant to harm you physically, but I know intentions don't matter anymore. I'm sorry." I read it twice, then a third time. I didn't forgive him instantly. Some wounds take time, but the anger I carried that day softened, not erased, humanized. That evening I showed Emily the letter. She cried quietly. "I don't know what to feel," she said. "You don't have to feel anything today," I replied. Truth doesn't excuse a crime, but it explains a mistake. A week later, I made a decision. I contacted the prosecutor and arranged a legal trust, not for Trevor, but for his younger brother's surgery. Anonymous. No name attached. Emily looked shocked. After everything he did. Why? I looked at Margaret's photograph on the wall. Because justice punishes wrongdoing, I said softly. But kindness prevents new wrongdoing. Months passed. I returned to gardening, to morning walks, to quiet dinners with my daughter. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the prison. Trevor had learned the surgery happened. He wrote only one sentence, greater than. You proved something I never understood. Power isn't control. It's mercy. I placed the letter in my desk drawer beside the recorder, not as forgiveness, but as a reminder. People betray for many reasons: greed, fear, desperation. But how we respond defines who we become. And at 72, I finally understood a lesson no courtroom ever taught me. Winning a case brings justice. Showing mercy brings peace. The end.